My name is Catherine Coulter, and Hank wants me to say that I'm going to tell you the story behind the stories, which is sort of kind of true. So please listen in and we'll all have some fun.
You're listening to the Author Stories Podcast, bringing you the story behind the stories and the storytellers.
Margaret White,
Terry Brooks,
Sheena Kamal,
Matthew Quick,
J.T. Ellison,
Walt D. Williams,
Brad Thor,
Corey, Dr. O,
Brandon Sanderson,
Robin Mom,
Ernest Klein, Jim Butcher,
Sherwin Harris.
Visit hankgarner.com for archives of all the shows. Today's guest is... Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to Author Stories. I really appreciate you tuning in to each and every episode. You know that you can subscribe to the show over at hankgarner.com. There's some handy links in the right-hand sidebar to help you do that so you never miss an episode. And I really hope you're enjoying the content that we're bringing you, and it's because of our wonderful sponsors that we're able to bring you the author interviews that we do each and every day. Some new sponsors this month: Holly Heisey Designs. Authors, you have just a few seconds when someone is browsing for your book on Amazon or one of the other bookstores to make that impression. Holly is one of the very best cover designers, and her designs will make your book stand out from the crowd. Go visit her at Holly Heisey Design. There's a link to it in the show notes. Also, A Bright Shore, The Eden Chronicles, Book 1 by S.M. Anderson. We're going to be talking a lot about this book coming up. A military sci-fi political thriller set a short decade from now, and you're going to love this book. This is a brand new book by a brand new author, and he's doing some really, really awesome stuff. Go pick up a copy of A Bright Shore, The Eden Chronicles, Book 1, and go support this first-time author. He's doing some really great stuff. I'm going to be telling you more about it in the next few days. Also, thank you to Chuck Buda for sponsoring the show. There's some links to his work in the show notes as well. And at the end of the show, as always, we're going to have an audiobook clip from Richard Gleaves, the Jason Crane series. Thanks for listening. Well, thanks for joining me again for the Author Stories Podcast, where I bring you the story behind the stories and the storytellers. Today, I'm really happy to have Catherine Coulter on the show with me. Catherine has a new book out called Enigma, and she also has another new book coming out with friend of the show, J.T. Ellison, soon. So we've got a lot to talk about. Welcome to the show, Catherine.
Thank you very, very much. Actually, you have the trade paperback of Enigma. The hardcover came out last August.
Exactly. I meant to say that. I apologize.
Did you know I'm an experiment?
No, I didn't. What is the experiment?
Well, they rarely, if ever, has there been a thriller put in trade paperback, because it's not titled like Girl on the Train, Girl in the Window, Girl in Chains, or Girl Under the Floor. You know, it's a thriller. So I'm an experiment to see, because this is they tell me at Simon & Schuster, somewhat of an audience that can, if they will enjoy this. So they put on this new cover. Can you tell me what the cover is, Hank?
The cover is it's wooden planks and water under it. So I guess it's like a pier looking down.
Yeah, it's supposed to be a dock. You're very good, because I never could figure it out.
Yeah, and it's broken, so that you've got this sense of dread, looking at it.
Dread. Well, do you like it? Do you respond?
Oh my gosh, yes. It's one of those that at first blush, it makes you look at it for a minute, and then, the water underneath is really unsettling, and I think it definitely hits that emotion spot that they're probably going for.
Well, we should have titled it "Girl Under the Broken Bridge." hey, there we go. Anyway, so this
has been the year for girl books, girl title books,
Oh Lord, yeah, I love those titles. So. We will see, so keep your toes crossed.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wish you had bought that rather than them giving it to you.
Well, you know what? I'll go buy a copy. Would that make you feel better, Catherine?
It would make me feel a whole lot better. At least I could count on one,
There you go. And I think I have a listener or two that we could probably talk into buying a copy as well. We'll see what we can do. We'll see what we can do. Well, we have gotten ahead of ourselves, Catherine. I begin each show. No, that's quite all right. But I begin each show with the same question. And that question is, what is your first memory of wanting to be a writer or a storyteller?
That's an interesting question. But I will be very honest with you. It was simply always there, and I never thought about it. I never questioned it. It's like people, everybody has a talent, and obviously the talents are in various degrees, and it depends on one discipline and all that good stuff. But I was just always good at writing and telling stories. And I was like that disgusting kid in school who could write a paper the night before and get an A+. It was simply there. It was accepted. So answer to your question, it was never like cookie. It was simply always there, and I just didn't think about it.
Well, I love that answer, and I love that you were honest about that answer, because I kind of have a pet theory that storytellers are born that way. That if you either have this innate thing where you need to tell stories, and you may or may not go on to be an author or a successful author, but you have the need to spin yarns and to make up stories, and then the work of writing comes later. But I love that it was that way for you. That's just, you had no other choice.
It was just there, but again, since it was so accepted, I started out. I was a professional student, because I didn't know what I wanted to do. Obviously, I wrote poetry because when you're a freshman in college, you always write really, really bad poetry.
You must.
So I got all these degrees, and I ended up being a speechwriter on Wall Street.
Nice.
And then suddenly this book came out of nowhere, and I said, well, okay. And I told my husband, and at that time he was in Columbia Presbyterian Medical School, and I'd see him maybe 30 minutes a night. And I was reading, maybe 15 books a week, and then one night, I'll never forget this, I threw the book across the room and said, I can do better. And I told him, and he said, let's go for it. And the next weekend, he managed to get it off, and that was the first and last time we plotted a book together. So that's really how it started. I mean, it was just, like falling into it. I never planned to be a writer. It just happened like that. I can do better. And I thought I was so original, like nobody ever else has experienced this. No. My editor told me that maybe 60% of the authors she knows start that way. I can do better. It's not this need to get these words on paper. It just happens. It's the switch flicks and you're off. So that's how it started.
I have definitely heard that story before.
Yeah,
and I've read those books, and I've groaned and rolled my eyes and said, "Oh my gosh, I could do so much better than this crap."
I didn't use the word crap.
Well, of course, you're a lovely lady. Why would you?
And you're a lovely gentleman who looks like he could kick big butt.
Well, we've got that going for us. So that initial feeling of you're unstoppable, you can write the best book ever, and this is going to be a twist that no one's ever seen before. What a wonderful experience to live through, because you never quite get that back after that first experience, do you?
Well, again, I never really, there was simply never any doubt or questioning about, oh my God, will I get published? I didn't even think about it. Because this was back, right after the Ark landed in Manhattan, and the printing press was just coming into being, and it was perfect timing. So I didn't question it. It just happened. And in terms of getting it published, when you didn't know anything about nothing, I happened to ride the A train to Wall Street with a guy from William Morrow. And so he says, I'm sure everybody told him, hey, I've written a book, blah, blah, blah. We all know that. And he didn't quite pat me on the head, but he did give me the name of a freelance editor. And I gave her the book. She read it, and she says, "Hey, let's go for it." And that's how, again, there was no angst involved at all about, oh, what will happen to my work? Is it good? Is it bad? Is it crap? In Hank's words, I just didn't think about it. I didn't think about it.
That's wonderful.
I just did it. And of course, the first book took about a year because, oh my God.
Right. Your husband, you said that was the first and last time that you guys plotted a book together. What was that experience like working with him, and then what has he been like since then?
Well, I will say for him that he simply never had any doubts. He never expressed any doubts at all, and I honestly don't remember exactly how we plotted that first book or how much I brought into it. I just don't remember. I just know that he was part of it, and he named it, which I thought was clever. And then from then on out, I call him the editor from hell. And, until I taught him how to be a better editor, as in like you start out positive before you say this is crap. We'd have divorce court twice a year.
Right.
But he didn't really edit all the historical romances, which is where I started, and the Regencies. He got very involved when I switched over to the suspense thrillers because, they are so complicated because there's so many layers to the onion. And there are so many loose ends, and they're all running around trying not to let you catch them. And so you desperately need someone else, someone who's a very good editor, someone who is smart, to say, wait a second, what about this? What about that? That doesn't sound right, blah, blah, blah. So he is the first-line editor on all the FBI books. He has nothing to do with the books that JT and I do together. I'm the big editor on those. And it's so interesting how you can be, I'm an excellent editor, but not of my own stuff, which is very frustrating and very, you like curse hit things. But that's simply, everybody's so different. You're right, everybody is so, but I simply, it's what it is, long accept.
It's a really great way that your mind can turn off, that it's so difficult to edit your own stuff, but then you can completely take a critical eye to someone else. That's such a
Yes.
bizarre thing, but it's absolutely true.
Yeah, it's a very different talent. True, I didn't know this good until G and I working together, and it becomes so obvious, Right. But anyway, yeah, okay.
So
you know my baby, JT.
I do. She was on the show. Gosh, it's been several months ago, maybe like 8 or 9 months ago. But yeah, she's a wonderful, wonderful writer.
Oh, I agree. Totally, obviously.
Yeah, I think the world of her. I think she's doing fantastic stuff for sure.
Yes.
So you began writing, Regency and romance. What was it about that genre that you loved?
Well, to be perfectly honest, I started writing Regencies because this was the golden age of the Regency romance, and it was a subgenre, and it was actually developed by a British artist. Incredible. I loved her as a kid. I loved her. And I had enough of a brain to realize you're attempting something very different, an entire book. So what you want to do is limit the unknowns. So my master's degree is in early history, Napoleonic and European history, 19th century. And so I knew the period, the Regency period, which is about the time, you can stretch it back to about 1810 to like 1824 when George IV died. And, it was the time of Beau Brummel. It was the time of Napoleon and Waterloo. It was a very, very exciting time in history, and I knew it perfectly. So I didn't have to do any research, which made a huge, huge difference, and I loved the genre. So I even did my own neologisms that I saw in later books. It was wonderful. The way they spoke and so forth.
Right.
So I had the brain to start with something that wouldn't require any extra stuff, just focus on a story. So that's the way that started.
Which
And I
brings
strongly suggest that to anyone who wants to write. You know, one thing that just drives me absolutely mad is people will get up there and say, "Oh, write the book of your heart." And I say, fine, write it. That's one book. Now, write the book that you have a good idea about, because we have idiots. We have books and research, and we have the Internet now. So come on. Anyway. So I've never really had a book. I had one book of my heart along there. But what were we talking about? Because you got me all excited.
Well, that's writing what you're immersed in and what you know. I completely get that, and that I'm sure that those.
That's the way to start. That's
exactly.
the way to limit the unknowns.
Right, and which brings me to my next question: is how did you switch to writing, thrillers and mystery thrillers, because that was not what you were immersed in, not what you were educated in, obviously, and in getting to writing about the FBI and these agents. How did you switch gears, and what was it that intrigued you about those kinds of stories that made you want to do those?
Well, interestingly enough, my brain, most of the historical romances have mysteries in them because my brain works that way. So that was nothing new. And then it came to an idea came to me when I was in Europe one time, a complete book, and I said, "Oh goodness!" And it was contemporary, and it was a romantic suspense as opposed to a suspense thriller. Or romantic suspense is, again, the emphasis is on, it's like Woman in Jeopardy, and it's about a relationship with all the mystery and suspense going on around it, whereas a suspense thriller, you have the conundrum and all the fear and work going on in the center, and then you can have anything you want around it, like relationships, whatever. So I wrote, I guess, 3 romantic suspense, and the publisher just went nuts over them. But then Putnam brought me over, and they wanted historical romances, because those were the ones that were the big bestsellers at that time. And what happened is I wrote 3 trilogies, that's 9 books, in about 3 years, 4 years, I guess. And I was burned to my heels, to be perfectly honest, and it just happened to be, life is so much happenstance and serendipity. But I happened to be back in Texas for a family reunion, and my dear sister just came up to me, and without any preamble, she said, "Kate, have you ever heard of a little town on the coast of Oregon called the Cove? And they make the world's greatest ice cream, and bad stuff happen." I just went on point. Simply went on point. And so I told my editor, and of course they really didn't want me to, because it was, why fix it if it ain't broken? But, I just pushed on it and dug in my 3-inch heels, which I wear maybe once every 6 months, and wrote Cove. And then when they got it, they wanted to put it in hardcover. And oh boy, I said, please, no. I don't care failure, but the last thing I want, I'm changing genres. The last thing you want to do is fail in hardcover. So they brought it out in paperback, and it just went wild. And I got to say, though, they put the best cover I have ever seen. And this is true because then 20 other books copy it. So then they did a couple of years later, put it in hardcover. And then after I gave them that book, they said, "Well, when's the next one?" And I hadn't thought of it, because this was a standalone in my mind. And I said, oh dear, what, and then I kid you not, and I know you've heard this 100 times, a voice in the back of my head said, "Well, what about me, Catherine?" And it was Dylan Savage, and he'd appeared maybe in the second half of the book. And I said, "Well, okay." And he was a computer nerd and really a cool guy. And then the second book, though, was really about Sherlock. And, of course, since it's a suspense thriller, they marry off stage, because that's not what's the focus of the book. And JT actually told me this. She said, "Catherine, the book is not a series until the 4th one." And I looked at her, I said, "You're nuts. That's crazy." But she was totally right, because when I got to the fourth book, The Edge, that's when that's when it became a series, and Savage and Sherlock then were the thread that run through the series. And most of the books have two mysteries, because again, my brain works that way. And you get to introduce new characters. There's a mystery for Savage and Sherlock, and then new characters or repeat characters, whatever. So that's how it started, and I work with the editor from hell. My editor loves him because she gets this book that's so clean, she reads it for enjoyment. You know,
how
there's
funny.
very little to do. Very, very little. So anyway, Hank, are you asleep yet?
No. I'm fascinated by the journey. I love the happenstance of life.
I do too.
You mentioned that a minute ago, and that's my favorite thing about talking to people, is that the circuitous route that life takes us to get where we are, I think is the story behind the stories, how we get to where we are. And as an author who has written as many books as you have, and had such a great genre journey, beginning in romance and Regency and thrillers, about FBI agents. What do you think about being flexible as a writer and not kind of digging in and dropping anchor in a genre, so that when you see the tides turning, and maybe readers, maybe their palette changes, so that you can stay nimble enough to move with the times, but not only that, to pursue other things that you as a writer are interested in, because, we don't all read just one genre. I know I don't. I read all over the place. And sometimes I want to tell one story, and sometimes I want to tell something completely different. How do you see that as a writer who's had such an illustrious career as you? How do you stay nimble to be able to move like that?
That's a lot. That's a lot.
That's like 18 questions.
A lot of me.
I know.
Well, to be honest, I know that I know that some writers are very concerned. Well, the historical romances aren't selling us well this year. I've got to do something. No. You write what you want to write. And if you're lucky, enough people like what you write so that they will follow you. And women, as you know, by 85% of the books, and women readers are the most flexible. They read everything. If they like an author, they will read everything that author writes. It's very, very true. I do the same thing myself. If I like you, I don't care what you write, because there's something about you that's magic to me. So I've never given it any thought, and I have not dropped the historical romance. Actually, for a number of years there, I made the deal with the publisher. I said, I'll write an FBI, and then I want to write a historical romance. And how do I say this? It keeps your brain unconstipated, because both genres are totally disparate from each other. For example, in the suspense thriller, it's pacing. It's research on, for heaven's sakes, DNA and all that stuff, which is an incredible amount of work. Whereas in historical romance, I usually stick now with the Regency period because I love it so much. And if I want to take you to the cat races in southern England, let's go. I don't have to get you turning the pages glued to that book. It's so different. And I think it keeps you fresh. But as I've gotten older, I don't write as quickly, so I have to write. I do one FBI a year, and then JT and I do one Brittany FBI a year. But what I'm trying to do, because readers love the historicals, they love them. So I'm now trying to finish the third novella that's set with one of the big characters in a series in Regency England. And it's just lots of fun. And again, it's so disparate from the suspense thrillers. So that's what I use to keep fresh. And you just pray. Savage and Sherlock now, their 22nd adventure is coming out in July. and the thing is, you just pray that they do not devolve into caricatures of themselves, which you have seen and I have seen happen. And I just tell my husband, I tell my editor, tell me, because when the series needs to come to an end, if I'm not bright enough to see it, somebody's got to be bright enough. So that's how that happened. I really don't worry about it. Everybody is so into, JT knows all this stuff, which means then I don't have to worry about it.
Right.
I'm on Facebook every day. I enjoy the hell out of it. I love all these people. We talk every day. I write every day, post. And then everything else, is taken care of. And email, fan email, I take care of that. But all this other stuff, these new sites that just appear every day, it's amazing. And we'll get a marketing plan, and I'll look at it and I say, well, what's that? But again, all I have to do is ask JT.
Right. Well, with 20 some odd books with Savage and Sherlock, are they? First off, did you ever imagine that they would have such a career in your mind? And do you ever struggle to find new circumstances to drop them in?
I hate to say this again, but I never really gave it any thought. The next book was usually a what-if idea.
Right.
I rarely come up with a whole plot in the last 10 or 15 years. I'll come up with a what-if idea, or I don't have any ideas at all, and I simply sit down, and a sentence will come out of my fingers, and I say, well, okay, let's see where this goes. In terms of the series, no, I never actually gave it any thought. So, okay, guys, what are we going to do now?
We began our conversation talking about Enigma and this fantastic cover that's on the trade paperback that I have a copy of. But the hardback had an extremely different cover. It could not be more
beautiful?
Different. It is beautiful, but is such a complete enigma. The difference in these two covers. But the cover of the hardback is this DNA strand and the double helix, and then in the center connecting pieces of the double helix, it's binary code, which gives me a lot of different feelings here. Is this going to be a medical thriller? It's obviously has some computer connotation with the binary code. Tell us about this book and what the images on these two different covers, how do they reconcile?
They do not. The double helix, we found that image. There are tons of images of that online. And when I saw the binary, I said, that's fun. And the art department signed Schuster. It was outstanding. There were very few tweaks on that cover. It's the most beautiful, fascinating cover I've ever had in my life. They wanted, for the trade, again, they were appealing to a different audience, I was told. So I had no input in that cover. I said, you guys, your audience here in the trade thing, you go with what you want, although I have no clue what that is. So normally I'll have cover ideas, and if I don't, then they will come up with stuff, and then that sparks ideas, and you can say, well, let's try this, but let's go this way, and blah 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 blah. And that's how a cover should come about, with the author's input. And alas, not all authors get that much input, which is too bad.
That's true. And sometimes some debut authors have no input.
None at all. And that just infuriates me, because I can remember I had no cover input at all, and I got it was my horrible crap. Never mind, let's not go there.
I sense a recurring theme in this show, Catherine. Well, tell us about the story of Enigma. What happens in this story, and how does Savage and Sherlock, how do they get injected into the story?
Well, the way it starts, and actually my editor, Lauren McKenna, who is one sharp cookie, the book started with actually Savage there at Kara Moody's house called to him by a neighbor he's known all his life that there's a crazy guy holding her captive inside, and she was a shrink all of her professional life, and she knew that he was reaching the end, and she was afraid he would kill Kara and the baby. So then Savage goes in. Now, you read the book, right? Great. So what Lauren suggests, she said, no. She said, start with a short prologue in John Doe's head, what he's doing, what's happening in his mind. And so I wrote that, and she was right. It really grabs you. And so what happens is that the young man who's holding her, he's hit in the head, and he's in a coma. And then, of course, there's all this mystery. Kara has the baby, and then John Doe, they call him because they don't know who he is. He has no idea. He just has this yellow hospital sort of thing on his wrist that says number 2 and Enigma 2. I can't remember what it said. E2, I guess it was. And then the baby is kidnapped. And, let me tell you about the FBI, how my relationship with them. Can I back up a second?
Absolutely.
This was about 6 months before 9/11. If it had been after 9/11, it wouldn't have happened because they closed down so tight there a cockroach couldn't have gotten under the door. But 6 months before 9/11, they called me and asked me, they have a unit that knows everything that is written about the FBI in the known and unknown universe, right? So I'm a big proponent of the FBI. I think there are whole lots of mistakes. Obviously, it's a bureaucracy. But they called me and they said, would you like to come in and we will show you around? It was a VIP visit. And so I had an assistant director, and he spent the day, and we went to the gun range. I saw all the Hoover building. They took us out to Quantico, and this is where, all the new agents have 16 weeks of training. Now I believe it's 20. And I met many, many of them, and I was so impressed. All of these people, the women, their mothers, they'd been in the FBI, the men and their fathers, even some to grandfathers were FBI, and they all wanted to do good. Now, they're in a bureaucracy. They don't all have, anyway, we know crap happens. Things happen. But I think at its core, the agents in the FBI are remarkable people. They really, really care. So it was a great visit. I made lots of friends. And one of the main friends, then of course after 9/11, they early retired most of the old guard. In fact, they retired the last of the old guard who had been trained under Hoover.
Wow.
Okay? Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Well, the benefit was that it was a new world, and terrorism was now the thing. But on the bad part of it, there was very little continuity. So everybody was having to learn and try to figure out what to do. And, of course, President Bush, it was late, but it finally happened. He put the order, no more fiefdoms. The CIA and the FBI were two separate fiefdoms, and they didn't talk to each other. They hated each other. And this is, of course, why 9/11 happened, because nobody talked to the other. So I understand from my people at the FBI, it's going a bit back the other way, which is sad. But the person at the FBI, she is in the information office. And when I said that Kara Moody in Enigma, her baby, was kidnapped out of the hospital, I called her and I said, what do I need to know here? She hooked me up with a supervisor of the card team, and they are responsible for kidnappings out of the maternity ward. And so everything in there, whoever I need to speak to, I speak to. I can find out stuff from. In the book Paradox that's coming out, I needed a forensics anthropologist because we have all these bones found at the bottom of this lake. And so I talked to the head forensic anthropologist out of Quantico and figured everything out. So I'm very, very lucky, but I would like to, if any authors are listening to this and you want to do FBI stuff, all you have to do is call, because they want things to be correct. They don't want things to be wrong. I remember she told me, she said that James Patterson, he had called her for something, and she said, now, why didn't you call me about blah, blah, blah before? Because you got it wrong. And so, I mean, they want stuff to be right. So if authors are listening, call them. Call them, because they will help you. And where were we?
That's a great piece of advice, and you mentioned some of them in the acknowledgments of the right up front in the book.
Yes, Angela Bell is always number one because she's my person.
I love it.
And the that's all right.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, the supervisor of the behavioral science unit, which is profiling, and where people burn out within 3 to 5 years because it's so absolutely horrible, dreadful, but crazy, never mind. Anyway, he finally retired, but we emailed a couple of times a month, and he'd tell me about, his teenage daughters, and, why am I going to get her to 21? And, this is a guy who sees the most horrible of the horrible and trying to keep that balance. Amazing. These people are amazing. Anyway, so that's...
Well, I don't care what kind of things you've seen in life. Until you've raised a teenage daughter, you don't know what horror is.
He said something close to that.
I have 3 of them, and just it's just like you're walking in a minefield. That's it's crazy.
It's like trying to nail Jell-O to a tree, I've heard.
Right.
So
God, I hope my daughters never listen to this. Yeah. You mentioned earlier that your books usually have a couple of different mysteries, and in reading your work, the plot lines are very dense and tightly woven, and just real page turners.
Yeah.
How much planning goes into the book before you start writing, and do you plot them out pretty heavily ahead of time?
Oh, baby, this is so sad. I actually have no idea what's going to happen in the book because I don't know. So it's called being, I was told I'm a pantser. I write by the seat of my pants, as opposed to a plotzer who plots things out. I remember Ridley Scott. No. What's his name? Ridley. My brain just went dead. Anyway, he writes mysteries and so forth. He has, around the walls of his office, each scene, he will write the scene. He will get up, walk to that note card, put a red X, read the next note card, and then start on that. I wish I could do that, maybe, but I have absolutely no clue. That second plot with Manta Ray, with Liam Hennessy, simply developed. It just simply developed. Now, when you're a pantser, you have to keep, we call it backward buildup, because when you write something, it could be utter crap. It doesn't matter. As long as you write something, you have a skeleton. So it's very hard to edit a blank page, as you probably know. So the minute you write it, your brain immediately goes to work on it and say, well, no, that's not right. How about if we do that? No, that's not going to work, but how about this? So the first thing you do in the morning is you've written what 24 hours of writing brain have come up with. It's still probably not right. You're still correcting backward build up. So it takes a time. It takes longer than it would, say, if you had plot out. And it's hairy, but it's the way I know. So the whole thing with Liam Hennessy, it's developed.
You are a truly prolific writer. We mentioned the series that you've written, and you're churning out multiple volumes a year, even now. Are there any tricks that you've learned over the years that help you to stay on task and to keep the words flowing?
That's a really good question. Actually, no. I think the whole trick to anything, if you want a chance to succeed in life, is you have to be disciplined. And I am supremely disciplined. I don't think there's writer's block. What I think is there are bad ideas, and you just have to let them know. It happened one time. I threw a page. You simply trust that a plot or another idea will come out of your parking lot in your brain, and it does. So, to be honest, I don't think about it. I'm like the book now should be thinking about the next FBI for, 2019, Anyway. I haven't a clue what it's about, but I'm finishing up the novella, and then I'll go to it. And you walk from A to B to C, and there's you just go. But disappointing, obviously.
Obviously, and you have to be clued into your characters and believe in what's going on, and just hope that they show up when you show up.
They show up first before me.
They're like waiting for you. All right, Catherine, where are you?
It seems that they know things before I do, and then I kind of clue in. But no, we kind of get to know each other again together. But it works. I don't know if you do this. This was such a shock to me. A week and a half ago, I was at the Savannah Book Festival. Great time, and I had dinner with my publisher. And we were talking, I don't know how it came up, but I said, well, I was told early on that why it's so important to keep your word. For example, you get to pick your own due date, right? And it never occurred to me that you couldn't keep that date unless something happened. But I was told that 60% of authors miss their due dates, which means the house is in a constant state of chaos and harassment. And I remember she looked at it, she said, oh, no, it's much higher than 66%. And she said, that's why we love you. We schedule your books before we even get them. We don't even worry about it. We just schedule them. And that's what Putnam did as well. So, again, if there are any authors listening, people, you give your word, you keep it. And only death should prevent it, and that probably should be your death.
Well, I think we like to romanticize the art of writing a lot of times, and people throw around words like the muse and things like that. But really, if you're a professional, then you show up every day and you do the work, and
it's your job.
It's your job. It's your job. Yes, it's an art form. Yes, you can do magical things in the prose when you get there. But you know what? No magic happens if you don't show up for work.
Can't edit a blank page.
That's
exactly
right. Yeah.
That's right.
Well, you have another FBI thriller coming out early this summer, but in just a few weeks, you've got the new book with J.T. Ellison, whose ears are absolutely on fire after this interview. Tell us about the book with J.T., The Sixth Day, that's coming out soon.
The Sixth Day. This book, it's the fifth book in the series. And interestingly enough, JT is also a pantser. But you can't work that way if you're working together. You cannot work that way. So we will sit down and we will brainstorm and we will map out the book. And I remember, I think it was with The Devil's Triangle, the last one, which is my favorite. We plotted out chapter 1 through 95. And I don't know how we did it, but we did it, and that book just flowed. On this one, two things happened. Number one, they wanted it on a schedule, so there was an FBI book, then 6 months later there'd be a new Brittany FBI book. So we had to condense time. So we had much less time to do the sixth day, which meant there were just so many problems with it because we simply had not had enough time together, and JT was tearing her hair out, and I was kind of and then I didn't have as much time with it as I normally would. Normally I will be 6 weeks, and JT and we have totally disparate styles, but in her I just saw absolute magic. And we worked together because, since my name's on the book, I drive the bus. You have to have somebody drive the bus, otherwise you're going to have anarchy. So, our dialogue is very different. So I'm on every page. I read the dialogue because it's my dialogue, and then become a good editor when it's not my book that I wrote myself. I can say, we need something here. This doesn't make sense, blah, blah, blah. And so then JT and I are on the phone like, I don't know, 5 or 6 times a day. And I think I had 6 weeks, 12 hours a day. And God knows how much hair she pulled out and how many hours a day she worked, but we did it. We got it in. The book is out April the 10th. I gave them the book on the 15th of January. They gave me the copy the editor had comments, addressed those. I addressed those, and then I got the copy edited. JT also got the copy edited, and then just lots and lots, tons of stuff that you want to kick something. But it taught us a huge lesson. That is, now that we have the time, in fact, she and I met the beginning of February and plotted out the next book for, excuse me, Hank, 2019. So this experience, the book ended up being amazing. Have you read it?
I have not read it yet. It's on my list, and what would be fun is when that book comes out to have you and JT come on together and talk about it.
We could certainly do that. And do me a favor. I'm sure you have the ARC. Wait for the final book, because there were so many changes, and then I know you, as really an expert reader, would catch problems that were later fixed. So if you could wait for the book to come out and then read the finished product, I would really appreciate it. And I think
sure
you
will.
You would be the beneficiary of many hours of back-breaking work on that puppy. But it turned out great, and I think JT wouldn't mind at all, and I'd certainly enjoy it.
I would love to. We need to set that up for sure.
All right.
Catherine, it's been so much fun talking to you. The new book, the new trade paperback book is Enigma. We're going to send everybody to pick up a copy of it. And thank you so much for all of the books that you have written. And it doesn't look like you're slowing down anytime soon. And we thank you for that.
Well, I promised people that I would croak over the keyboard.
That's the way to go, isn't it? Tell everybody where they can find you online if they would like to get plugged into all you're doing and follow along.
Okay, go to my website, CatherineCoulter.com, and sign up for my newsletter. It's once a month, and hopefully really funny. And I'm also at Facebook.com/CatherineCoulterBooks. I post every day, and I answer everybody usually. And let's see, I'm also on Twitter, and that's just Catherine Coulter, on Goodreads. And actually the posts on Twitter and Goodreads Daily are the posts from Facebook. If anybody wants to email me, it's readmoi, just clever, I think, at gmail.com. And those are the things. But try to let me sign you up for the newsletter, Hank, okay? Because I'm going to have it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Catherine, for coming on the show today.
Thank you. Pleasure to meet you on the phone.
Thanks for listening to the Author Stories podcast. For more great author interviews like this one, go to hankgarner.com and dig through the archives. There's something there I know you'll love. Now stay tuned for a special audio clip from Richard Gleaves' The Jason Crane series.
Didn't your dad teach you not to trespass? Yeah. Sorry, I'll go. Joey stepped forward, but Hedwig remained motionless, blocking the only exit. No. Someone needs to learn a lesson about respecting other people's property. Joey felt unnerved and panicky. Please, Hedwig. Mr. Van Brunt. Please, Mr. Van Brunt. May I go now? Please? Not such a smart-ass now, are you? His voice grew flat and contemptuous. You little bastards think you run the world, but you have no idea. No idea where your food comes from, what your parents have to go through to put clothes on your back. Humiliating jobs, long hours, going gray, to provide for you. What are you talking about? Life. Real life. You think it's easy, don't you? Don't you? Those stupid adults doing their stupid adult things while you play all day. Well, it's hard. You hear me? It's hard. Joey's breath caught. He knew what Hedwig was capable of. What did you do to Jason? Nothing. Where is he then? Jason's run away from home. I don't believe you. I don't care what you believe. I'm the adult. I ask the questions. What did you do to my son? To Zeph? Is Zeph okay? No, he's not. Zeph is not okay. And it was you, wasn't it? You're the one who did it. Who did what? Who twisted his mind. I haven't done anything to Zeph. Don't lie to me! Hedwig raised a hand, and a fireball blossomed there. Joey had never seen Hedwig's gift before. The man held a piece of hell. His face looked like something carved from driftwood, full of cracks and crevices. His eyes were shadowed and vacant, but glittering with flame, like knotholes full of fireflies. Yeah, someone's mind had twisted, but not Zeph's. Hedwig's gone batshit. Hedwig passed the fireball from one hand to the other. Did Zeph send you for his things? I know you know where he is. He said he was in love with you. Hedwig made it sound as if Zeph had confessed to murder. Is that true? I don't know. Hedwig broke into a wide grin. Well, we can find out, can't we? He's a Pynchon, right? A Pynchon would know. Know what? You're not making sense. It's their gift. The Pynchon gift. My son's a Pynchon, like his whore of a mother. And Pynchons are telepaths. They always know when the people they love are in danger. Joey's eyes had gone wide. He blinked, trying to process the information. Zeph had a gift? For sure? They have a psychic alarm. If you hurt someone they love, they come running. He raised the fireball. So let's find out. Let's find out if Zeph really loves you. Let's see if he's a fag or not. I know he's not. You'll see. He won't feel a thing when I do it. When you do what? When I burn you black. Joey went cold. Hedwig meant it.